It wasn't the sight of my daughter's bare scalp that broke me first. It was the sound. The soft, dry crunch of my boot stepping on a thick, dark curl resting on the linoleum. The bathroom smelled like cheap clipper oil and peppermint. I didn't scream. I just stopped breathing. Chloe's hair was a living, breathing thing in our house. It was a heavy, dark waterfall that reached all the way down to her lower back, thick and prone to aggressive tangles. Every night, our ritual smelled like green apple detangler spray and warm cotton pajamas. I'd sit on the edge of the tub, my knees aching against the hard porcelain, while she sat on the bath mat, humming off-key to whatever pop song was stuck in her 10-year-old head. I'd work the wide-toothed comb from the bottom up, feeling the resistance of the knots, the satisfying give when they finally smoothed out. It was exhausting, honestly. I worked 50 hours a week as a logistics manager for a catering company, which is a fancy way of saying I yelled at delivery drivers and smelled perpetually of chafing fuel and stale coffee. By 8:00 p.m., my feet throbbed, my eyes burned, and the last thing I wanted to do was wrestle with 3 pounds of keratin. But it was hers. It was the one thing she took a fierce, almost arrogant pride in. She was a quiet kid, small for her age, with shoulders that naturally slouched forward as if apologizing for taking up space. But when her hair was down, swaying against her spine, she walked a little taller. Then came the spring musical, Matilda. Our local middle school didn't mess around with their productions. The drama teacher, Mr. Harrison, treated the spring musical like it was a Broadway tryout. The kids rehearsed until their voices went hoarse. The parents turned into feral, competitive monsters. I usually stayed on the periphery of that world. I didn't have the time or the energy to sit in the PTA meetings and argue over the budget for papier-mâché props. But Chloe wanted this. God, she wanted it. She had spent 2 months locking herself in her bedroom, playing the soundtrack on a loop until the bass rattled the cheap drywall of our duplex. I'd press my ear to the painted wood of her door and listen to her hit those high notes, her voice clear and piercing, stripping away all that quiet, slouched-shouldered timidness. When the cast list went up on a drizzly Tuesday afternoon, I was stuck at work dealing with a missing shipment of cocktail shrimp. My phone buzzed on the metal desk. A text from Chloe. Just a blurry photo of a piece of paper taped to cinder block and a circle drawn around her name in aggressive red marker. Matilda Wormwood, Chloe Miller. I cried. It was an ugly, snotty cry over an Excel spreadsheet. I was just so profoundly relieved for her. But my sister, Rebecca, didn't cry. Rebecca lived 4 blocks away in a house that always smelled intensely of bleach and vanilla plug-in air fresheners. It was a suffocating combination that coated the back of your throat. Rebecca had a daughter, Harper, who was 11. Harper was a good kid. But she was a product of her mother, highly managed, highly scheduled, and painfully aware of her own perceived status. Harper had auditioned for Matilda, too. She had been taking private vocal lessons since she was 6. Rebecca had spent $300 on a custom dress for the audition alone. Harper was cast as an ensemble member. The acrobat's daughter, which was basically a glorified extra who carried a prop box across the stage in Act 2, we had the mandated family dinner that Sunday at Rebecca's house. The air in her dining room was thick, heavy with the smell of roasting chicken and unspoken resentment. "It's just a very demanding role," Rebecca said, aggressively slicing a piece of dry chicken breast on her plate. The ceramic scrape of her knife set my teeth on edge. "I just worry about Chloe. She's so sensitive. And with your schedule, Sarah, how are you even going to get her to the evening rehearsals?" "We'll manage," I said, keeping my voice level. I took a sip of my wine. It was cheap, acidic, and gave me instant heartburn. I talked to my boss. "I'm shifting my hours." Rebecca's jaw tightened. She had this specific tell when she was angry. The skin around her nostrils would go stark white. "I just think Mr. Harrison has a bias. He prefers the kids who look a certain way. You know, that whole waifish, neglected aesthetic." It was a dig. A sharp, little needle aimed right at my ribs. I was a single mom. Rebecca was married to a regional bank manager. She had a manicured lawn. I had a patch of dirt where my Honda leaked oil. To Rebecca, Chloe's quiet nature and long, untamed hair made her look unkempt. To Mr. Harrison, it made her the perfect Matilda. She earned it, Becca, I said, my voice dropping an octave. She sang her heart out. Of course she did, Becca smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. We're all just thrilled for her, aren't we, Harper? Harper looked down at her peas and nodded silently. I caught Chloe shrinking back in her chair, her hand reaching up to twist a long strand of her brown hair around her index finger, a self-soothing tic she'd had since she was a toddler. I should have seen the danger then. I should have recognized the particular shade of venom in my sister's eyes. It wasn't just jealousy. It was an offended sense of order. In Rebecca's world, the Millers with the nice house and the vocal coaches got the lead. The single mom and the quiet kid got the background. I didn't see it. I was just tired, and I wanted to go home. 2 weeks into rehearsals, the catering company landed a massive corporate retreat contract. It was an all-hands-on-deck nightmare. My boss told me I needed to pull a double shift on Saturday to manage the load-in. I had a problem. Chloe had a mandatory choreography rehearsal at 1 p.m., and I wouldn't be able to leave the site. I went down my mental list of reliable people, which was depressingly short. The only person available was Rebecca. I can take her, Rebecca had said over the phone on Friday night. Her voice was surprisingly light, breezy even. Harper has to go anyway. Drop Chloe here at 9 a.m. They can hang out, play, and I'll drive them both to the school. Are you sure? I asked, pacing my small kitchen, the linoleum cold beneath my bare feet. I know it's a hassle. Sarah, we're family. Don't be ridiculous. Saturday morning broke gray and heavy with impending rain. I woke Chloe up early. She was groggy, her face creased with pillow lines, her hair a massive, chaotic bird's nest. I didn't have time to do our usual 20-minute detangling routine. Just put it in a messy bun, baby, I told her, handing her a thick elastic tie while I shoved my feet into my work boots. I'll brush it out properly tonight, I promise. She scraped her hair back, wincing as the elastic snapped against a knot. I kissed her forehead. She smelled like sleep and toothpaste. I dropped her at Rebecca's house. The front door opened before I even killed the engine. Rebecca was standing on the porch in a pristine beige cashmere sweater, holding a mug of coffee. Harper was behind her, already fully dressed in her dance clothes. Thanks again, Becca, I yelled through the rolled-down window, the damp morning air chilling my face. I'll pick her up straight from the school at 4. Take your time, Rebecca waved, pulling Chloe inside by the shoulder. The heavy oak door shut with a solid, definitive thud. My workday was a blur of chaos. Sinking tents, missing extension cords, a panicked sous chef who accidentally dumped a gallon of hollandaise sauce down a storm drain. My phone stayed in my back pocket, vibrating occasionally, but I couldn't look at it. My hands were coated in dirt and grease. By 3:45 p.m., the crisis had abated enough for me to slip away. I was exhausted, my shoulders tight, an empty ache gnawing at my stomach. I got into my car and drove toward the middle school. The rain had finally started, fat drops smearing the windshield, turning the suburban streets into a blurry wash of gray and dull green. I pulled into the school parking lot at 4:05 p.m. The kids were already spilling out of the gymnasium doors. I saw Harper climbing into the passenger side of Becca's white SUV. I parked and jogged through the rain, looking for Chloe. She usually lingered by the double doors, chatting with the girl who played Miss Honey. She wasn't there. I walked up to Becca's SUV and tapped on the wet glass. Becca rolled it down halfway. The smell of vanilla and leather spilled out. "Where's Chloe?" I asked, wiping rainwater off my cheek. Becca didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead at the steering wheel, her grip white-knuckled. "She's at my house." "What? Why? Didn't she have rehearsal?" "She had an accident earlier," Becca said. Her voice was flat, devoid of its usual syrupy inflection. She couldn't go. My stomach bottomed out. The exhaustion vanished, replaced instantly by the cold, sharp spike of maternal adrenaline. "What kind of accident? Is she hurt? Why didn't you call me?" "She's not hurt," Becca snapped, finally looking at me. Her eyes were hard, defensive. "Just go to the house, Sarah. The spare key is under the frog planter." She rolled the window up before I could say another word and put the car in drive, tires hissing on the wet asphalt as she pulled away. I sprinted back to my car, My hands shook so badly I dropped my keys twice trying to get them into the ignition. I broke 3 traffic laws getting to Becca's house. The drive, which usually took 10 minutes, took 4. I threw the car into park in her driveway, not even bothering to straighten out. I scrambled through the wet mulch to find the heavy cast iron frog, shoved it aside, grabbed the key, and jammed it into the lock. "Chloe!" I yelled, pushing the door open. The house was eerily silent. Just the low mechanical hum of the massive refrigerator in the kitchen and the steady ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. The smell of vanilla was overpowered by something else. Something chemical. Metallic. "Chloe!" I screamed, panic rising in my throat, choking me. "Mum?" The voice was tiny. It came from the downstairs half bathroom at the end of the hall. I ran down the hardwood floor, my boots leaving muddy streaks. The bathroom door was ajar. I pushed it open. The first thing I saw was the sink. It was choked, clogged completely with dark brown matter. Hair. Long, thick ropes of it. Strands cascading over the porcelain edge, dripping onto the pristine white tile. The smell of cheap clipper oil, that sharp, sterile, metallic odor, was suffocating in the small, windowless room. I looked down. Chloe was sitting on the closed toilet lid. She was wrapped in one of Becca's monogrammed towels, her small shoulders shaking. She was staring at her hands in her lap. Her head was shaved. It wasn't a messy, accidental cut. It wasn't a bob. It was a military-grade buzz. Pale, raw scalp showed through a sparse quarter-inch of brown stubble. The skin around her ears was red and irritated. I couldn't breathe. The air in the room vanished. The fluorescent light above the mirror buzzed, a high-pitched, mocking sound that drilled directly into my skull. I felt my knees buckle slightly, and I had to grab the doorframe to stay standing. "Chloe," I whispered. My voice didn't sound like my own. It sounded thin and hollow, like it was coming from the end of a long tunnel. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red, swollen almost shut from crying. Snot tracked down her upper lip. She didn't look like my daughter. Without the heavy curtain of hair, her face looked painfully small, exposed, fragile. "I'm sorry," she choked out, a wet, ragged sob tearing from her throat. "I'm sorry, Mom." "Why are you apologizing?" I dropped to my knees on the tile. I didn't care about the mud. I didn't care about the stray clumps of hair pressing into my jeans. I pulled her into my chest. She felt stiff, terrified. "Baby, what happened?" "What did she do?" she said. "She said it was the only way," Chloe sobbed into my shoulder, her small fists clutching the fabric of my damp shirt. "We were playing with Harper's slime, and it got in my hair. I tried to wash it out, but it stuck. I told her you could fix it. I told her, you always fix my tangles." She gasped for air, her whole body shuddering. But she said there wasn't time. She said we were going to be late. She got Uncle David's clippers. I begged her not to, Mom. I begged her. I said I would just put it in a bun. But she held my shoulders down, she said. She said if I wanted to be a star, I had to suffer for it. A cold, absolute stillness washed over me. The panic was gone. The confusion was gone. What replaced it was a rage so pure, so dense, it felt like a physical weight settling into my bones. I looked up at the bathroom counter. The clippers were sitting there, resting on a neatly folded hand towel. They were still plugged into the wall. The guard attached to the blade was a number 2. You don't use a number 2 guard to cut out a patch of slime. You use a number 2 guard to strip a person of their identity. You use it to humiliate them. I heard the front door open down the hall. "Sarah?" Becca's voice echoed down the hallway. It sounded cautious, a little tight, but still layered with that infuriating, manufactured innocence. "Are you in there?" I stood up slowly. My joints felt like they were made of rusted iron. I looked down at Chloe. "Stay right here, baby. Don't move." I walked out of the bathroom. Becca was standing in the foyer, shrugging off her wet trench coat. Harper was nowhere to be seen. She had probably scurried upstairs the second they walked in. Becca turned and saw me at the end of the hall. She offered a small, tragic smile, a practiced expression of sympathy. "I know it's a shock, Sarah. It looks bad now, but it'll grow back." It was just a disaster. That industrial slime Harper makes, it's practically superglue. It was matted to her scalp. I had no choice. I didn't say anything. I just walked toward her. My boots clicked rhythmically against the hardwood. I was distantly aware of how I must look hair damp with rain, a smudge of grease across my jaw, my eyes dead and locked onto her face. Becca's smile faltered. She took a half step backward, her back hitting the heavy oak door. "Sarah, let's be rational. Don't overreact. Kids get gum and slime in their hair all the time. It's a rite of passage." I stopped about 2 feet away from her. I could smell the vanilla again. I wanted to burn the house down just to eradicate the scent. "A rite of passage," I repeated. My voice was a dead, flat monotone. "Yes," Becca said, swallowing hard. The skin around her nostrils was stark white. "And honestly, the drama teacher will probably love it. It's very edgy, very orphan." I didn't yell. I didn't deliver a soaring, righteous monologue about motherhood and betrayal. My reaction was entirely physical, animalistic, and deeply imperfect. I reached out, grabbed the front of her pristine beige cashmere sweater with both hands, and slammed her backward against the oak door. The heavy thud rattled the glass panes. Becca gasped, her eyes going wide with genuine terror. She tried to pry my hands off her chest, but my grip was locked. I had spent the morning hauling 50-pound propane tanks. Becca spent her mornings holding a tennis racket. She couldn't move me an inch. "Sarah, stop!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Are you crazy?" "Where is the slime, Becca?" I whispered, leaning in so close I could feel the heat of her panicked breath on my face. "What?" "The slime. If you had to shave my daughter's head to get it out, there should be a clump of hair with slime in it. Where is it?" I threw it away. I flushed it. "You flushed a massive clump of industrial slime and hair down your plumbing?" I pressed my forearm against her collarbone. Not enough to choke her, but enough to let her know I could. "You love this house too much to do that." "You're hurting me," she cried, tears welling in her eyes. "Let me go. It was an accident." "It was a number 2 guard, Rebecca," I spat, the words tasting like copper in my mouth. "A number 2 guard across her entire scalp. You didn't just cut out a knot. You sheared her like a sheep. Because you couldn't stand that she got the part. You couldn't stand that Harper is standing in the background while the dirty little Miller girl stands in the spotlight." "That's not true," she sobbed, but her eyes darted away from mine. "The ultimate tell. You broke my daughter," I said, my voice finally cracking, the tears I had been holding back burning my eyes. "You held her down, and you stripped her of the only armor she had." I shoved her hard one last time, letting go of the sweater. She stumbled sideways, knocking an expensive ceramic vase off a side table. It shattered on the floor, exploding into 100 jagged white pieces. Becca stared at the broken ceramic, her chest heaving, her hands trembling. "You're unstable, Sarah. You're completely out of control. Pay for that." I looked at the vase. Then I looked at her. "Don't ever contact us again," I said softly. "If you come near my house, if you try to speak to Chloe at school, I will show everyone what you are. I will make sure every PTA mother, every neighbor, every person in your little country club knows that you are a jealous, cruel, pathetic bully who tortures children." I turned my back on her and walked down the hall. Chloe was standing in the doorway of the bathroom. She had put her clothes back on over the towel, clutching her backpack to her chest. She looked tiny. "Let's go home, baby," I said, keeping my voice gentle. I walked past the sink, grabbed the clippers off the counter, and yanked the cord from the wall. As we walked out the front door, I chucked the heavy plastic machine onto Becca's concrete driveway. It smashed, plastic casing cracking open, metal blades popping out into the wet driveway. We got into my car. The interior was freezing. I turned the key, cranked the heater all the way up, and pulled out of the driveway without looking back. The drive home was silent. The rain was coming down harder now, drumming a relentless, heavy beat against the roof. I kept glancing at Chloe in the passenger seat. She had pulled her hoodie up, attempting to hide her head, but the fabric hung strangely without the volume of her hair to hold it up. She was staring out the window, her jaw set, her eyes hollow. I felt a sickening rolling wave of guilt crash over me. I wasn't there. I was arguing over missing cocktail shrimp while my sister pinned my daughter down in a bathroom. I had handed her over to the wolf because I was too exhausted to see the teeth. We pulled up to our duplex. The dirt patch in the yard had turned to thick mud. I parked the car and turned off the engine, but neither of us moved to unbuckle. The only sound was the rain and the clicking of the cooling engine block. "Mom?" Chloe finally spoke. Her voice was scratchy from crying. "Yeah, sweetie." She kept her eyes fixed on the glove compartment. "Do you think Mr. Harrison will fire me? Because Matilda doesn't have a shaved head. She's supposed to have nice hair. Like Harper." My heart physically ached. A sharp, stinging pain in my chest. "No," I said, unbuckling my seatbelt and leaning over the center console. I reached out and gently pulled the hood back from her head. Her scalp felt warm and slightly rough under my palm. It felt so alien. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing myself to look at her bare, exposed face, to not flinch, to not show her my own horror. "Mr. Harrison didn't cast your hair, Chloe," I said fiercely, making sure she met my eyes. "He cast you. He cast your voice. And if anyone has a problem with how you look, they deal with me. Do you understand?" She nodded slowly, a fresh tear sliding down her cheek. "We're going to go inside," I told her, my voice steady, masking the hurricane of rage and sorrow spinning inside me. "We're going to order the biggest, greasiest pizza we can find. And tomorrow we figure out how to make this work." We walked inside. The house smelled like stale air and the lingering scent of last night's dinner. I walked into the bathroom to turn on the heat for a bath. My eyes fell on the edge of the tub. The bottle of green apple detangler was sitting right where I had left it. Next to it was her wide-toothed comb, a few long, dark strands of hair still tangled in the plastic bristles. I picked up the comb. I looked at those few strands of hair, and then, alone in the bathroom, with the door shut and the shower running to hide the sound, I finally fell apart. I sank to the cold tile floor, clutching a $2 plastic comb to my chest, and wept. Sunday was a graveyard. We didn't talk about the hair. We ate the pizza, cold, straight from the fridge. I went to a generic big box store at 7:00 a.m. and bought 6 knit beanies, black, gray, navy, the cheapest acrylic they had. When Chloe put the first one on, she winced. Her scalp was still raw from the aggressive clipper blades, and the cheap yarn scratched. I rubbed a thin layer of Aquaphor over her head first, my fingers trembling slightly as they glided over the foreign, bristly texture of her skull. She felt like a baby bird, vulnerable, stripped. Monday meant rehearsal. I called my boss, told him I was taking a personal day, and ignored his heavy sigh. At 3:15 p.m., I walked Chloe through the double doors of the school auditorium. It smelled like 80 years of floor wax, stale teenage sweat, and the sharp ozone hum of the massive theatrical lights suspended above the stage. Kids were everywhere, stretching, yelling, running lines. Harper was center stage, practicing a cartwheel with 2 other girls. When she saw us, she stopped dead. She nudged the girl next to her. A whisper rippled outward. I felt my jaw lock. My hands balled into fists in my jacket pockets. I was ready to scorch the earth. I wanted someone to say something. I was begging for an excuse to unleash the poison still bubbling in my gut. Mr. Harrison was sitting in the front row, a clipboard resting on his knees, massaging his temples. He looked exhausted, his tie loose, coffee stains on his cuffs. "Mr. Harrison," I said, my voice cutting through the ambient noise of 30 middle schoolers. He looked up, blinking. "Sarah, Chloe, you missed Saturday." "We had a family emergency," I said flatly. I stepped slightly in front of Chloe, acting as a physical barricade against the staring eyes on the stage. And there's been a physical change. Chloe lost her hair. All of it. The auditorium went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the vending machine out in the hallway. Harrison frowned. He stood up, setting the clipboard on the velvet seat. He walked over to us. He wasn't a tall man, but he had an intense, vibrating energy. He looked at me, then stepped around me to look at Chloe. Chloe was wearing an oversized gray hoodie, the hood pulled up over a black beanie, her chin tucked into her chest. She was shaking, a tiny, rhythmic tremor. "Take the hood down, Chloe," Harrison said. His voice wasn't demanding, it was just a request. "Quiet." I put a hand on his chest to push him back. "Don't push her." "I'm not," he said, not breaking eye contact with my daughter. "Matilda doesn't hide, Chloe. She stands up to monsters. Take the hood down." Chloe looked at me. I gave her a tiny nod, ready to pull her out of the room if she broke. Slowly, her pale hands reached up. She pushed the gray fleece back. Then she reached for the brim of the black beanie. She pulled it off. Someone in the back row gasped. A harsh, juvenile sound. Harper was staring, her hand covering her mouth. The fluorescent house lights bounced off the pale skin of Chloe's scalp. Without the heavy curtain of her dark hair, her cheekbones looked sharp. Her eyes looked massive, haunted, and deeply angry. Harrison didn't flinch. He didn't offer a pathetic, cloying smile of pity. He just tilted his head, studying her like a piece of architecture. "The Trunchbull would hate it," he murmured. Chloe blinked. "What?" "Your head," Harrison said, gesturing to it with his pen. "Miss Trunchbull demands uniformity, pigtails, neatness. You look like a rebel. You look like a kid who has been pushed to the absolute edge and survived." He smiled, a genuine, sharp grin. "It's brilliant. We're keeping it." "But the costume," Chloe started, her voice barely a whisper. "Screw the costume," Harrison said loudly, turning back to the stage. "Matilda is an outcast. She's raw. She's neglected. This is authentic." He clapped his hands, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "All right, everyone. From the top of Act 1. Let's go." The tension in the room snapped. The kids scrambled to their marks. Harrison walked away. Chloe stood there holding the cheap black beanie. She looked down at it, then up at me. For the first time in 48 hours, her shoulders didn't slump. She took a deep breath, dropped the hat onto a chair, and walked up the wooden stairs to the stage. I sat in the back row in the dark for 3 hours. I watched her block her scenes. She was stiff at first, hyper-aware of the cold air on her neck. But by the second act, the self-consciousness burned away. She stopped trying to hide. She used the exposure. Her anger translated into the character. She was fierce. Opening night smelled like hairspray and cheap foundation. 6 weeks had passed. The harsh, irritated redness of Chloe's scalp had faded to a pale, healthy beige. The hair had started to grow back. It wasn't the heavy falling curtains she used to have. It was a dense, velvety fuzz, about 1/2 inch long. It felt like rubbing a tennis ball. She had stopped wearing the beanies 2 weeks in. She said they made her head sweat. I think she just got tired of hiding. I sat in the 4th row aisle seat. I was wearing my only good blazer, smelling faintly of the dry cleaner's plastic bag. The auditorium was packed. It was a sea of murmuring parents, restless siblings, and the crinkle of paper programs. I saw Becca before she saw me. She was 6 rows back, sitting dead center. She was wearing a silk emerald blouse that probably cost more than my car payment. Her husband, David, was looking at his phone. Becca's spine was rigid. She was performing the role of the supportive theater aunt, smiling tightly at the parents around her. We hadn't spoken since the day of the shattered vase. She had texted me once, a long, paragraphless block of text defending her actions, blaming the slime, demanding an apology for the damage to her foyer. I deleted it without replying. I blocked her number. I blocked David's number. When Harper's name popped up on Chloe's iPad, I blocked that too. The amputation of my sister from my life was swift, brutal, and entirely necessary. I felt no grief, only a cold, clean emptiness. The house lights flickered, then dimmed to black. The crowd hushed. The heavy red curtain, smelling of dust and age, parted with a mechanical groan. The stage was lit in a harsh, cold blue. There she was. They hadn't put her in a wig. The PTA mothers had offered, showing up with glossy brown synthetic things in plastic bags, but Mr. Harrison had physically blocked the dressing room door. "Do not touch my lead," he had barked. Chloe sat on a stack of prop books center stage. She wore a faded, oversized cardigan that swallowed her small frame. And above the collar of the sweater, her head was a striking, fuzzy silhouette against the stage lights. Without the hair to frame her face, every expression was magnified. Every furrow of her brow, every tightening of her jaw. She didn't look cute. She didn't look pretty. She looked real. She looked like a kid who had lived in a house full of people who didn't want her. When she opened her mouth to sing her first solo, Quiet, the auditorium stopped breathing. Her voice wasn't just loud, it had a terrifying clarity. It cut through the heavy air of the room, vibrating against the wooden walls. She stared out into the dark expanse of the audience, her bare head held high. She wasn't slouching. The timidness was gone. She owned the space. I felt a tear hot and sharp against my cheek, but I didn't wipe it away. I didn't care who saw. I was watching my daughter take the worst thing that had ever been done to her, the deepest humiliation, and forge it into armor. In the second act, Harper had her big moment. She walked across the stage holding a painted cardboard box. She wore a pristine, ruffled dress, her hair curled into perfect, bouncy ringlets. She looked exactly like the porcelain doll Becca wanted her to be. She hit her mark, turned, and exited stage left. It took 4 seconds. No one clapped. It wasn't designed for applause. I didn't turn around to look at Becca. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what she was feeling. Her grand act of sabotage had failed. She hadn't ruined Chloe's moment. She had accidentally elevated it. She had handed Chloe the very thing she needed to become unforgettable. When the final chord struck and the lights flared for the curtain call, the audience erupted. It wasn't polite, suburban golf clapping. It was a roar. People stood up. Chairs scraped against the concrete floor. The ensemble cast bowed first, then the supporting leads. Finally, Chloe walked out from the wings. She stood dead center, looking out at the wall of sound and light. A slow, tentative smile broke across her face. She bowed deeply. When she stood back up, she ran a hand over the dark velvet fuzz of her scalp, a nervous, involuntary habit that replaced her old twisting tic. She didn't look ashamed. I stood up, clapping until my palms stung, the dry-cleaned blazer tight across my shoulders. I was just a tired logistics manager who smelled like chafing fuel on my best days. I didn't have a manicured lawn or a spotless kitchen. But looking at the girl on that stage, standing in the white-hot center of the spotlight, I knew I had done my job. I had protected the core of her. Later that night, the adrenaline faded, leaving us both hollowed out and exhausted. We sat in my beat-up Honda in the school parking lot, the engine idling to keep the heater running. The windows were fogged up. Chloe was slumped in the passenger seat, her heavy backpack resting on her knees. She smelled like stage makeup and sweat. "You were brilliant," I said, putting the car in gear. She stared out the window at the blurry orange streetlights. Harper wouldn't look at me backstage. "That's her problem, baby, not yours." She reached up, rubbing the stubble on her head again. It made a soft, rasping sound in the quiet car. "Mom?" she asked, her voice dropping to a sleepy whisper. "Yeah, Chloe. Do you think it'll grow back curly?" Mr. Harrison said sometimes when it gets cut this short, it grows back different. I looked at her. Her face was smudged with eyeliner, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. The ghost of the thick, heavy waterfall of hair she used to have was gone. It belonged to the past. Whatever came next was going to be entirely new. "I don't know," I said honestly, pulling out onto the wet asphalt. "But whatever it does, we can handle it." Family betrayal cuts deep, especially when it's disguised as helping. Chloe's hair will eventually grow back, but the boundaries Sarah set will last a lifetime. Sometimes the scars they try to leave on us become the very things that make us shine on stage. If this story hit home for you, please drop a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure to subscribe for more grounded, raw stories. Let me know in the comments, how would you have handled Becca?